Hi. I have had a lot of people ask me some questions about the yarns that I'm using in this Philosophical shawl, the one that I'm wearing, and the fact that they're stuck at home and they don't necessarily have their local yarn shop to wind their yarn. And the bamboo is lovely to knit with, but it does have a few little personality quirks that you need to know about winding. So first off, I have an Auxanometer gradient set, which means I have 6, I took them out of the cellophane wrap because it's loud, 6 beautiful skeins of yarn. You have probably a couple, unless you've chosen to play this adventure game with me and go with the gradient set. So the cool thing about this yarn is, even though it's dyed in Colorado, it's actually produced about 15 minutes away from my house in a really tiny little mill in an industrial complex called Fiber Lady. And my friends David and Michelle run it, which is really awesome. And I have been there. It's a lot of fun if you get a chance to go. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that they are a small mill and their staff includes the 2 of them. And so sometimes they have some volunteer help in tying skeins, which handy, but sometimes that means you get a little bit of a different tie-up. So first thing you need to know is to be patient with your Auxanometer. The last thing you want to do is lose your patience and get frustrated with your Auxanometer, because it is the fastest way to make a hot mess. So this is a hank of yarn. And when you open it, you'll notice that one end is popped through. And when you open it up, it makes this beautiful loop of silky drapey fiber. Can you see right here where it's tied? These are not factory ties. These are ties that Jennifer at Theodora's Pearls puts in before she dyes it. If you look here, see where the tie is the same color? This is a factory tie. And that's important because the ones that are not factory ties are not a part of your skein. And so you can remove those without worrying about cutting anything, as long as you're careful about where you place your scissors. The factory ties depend on who's tying it up. Oftentimes, the 2 ends are tied together. Sometimes they're tied one end here, one end over here. We have no control over that. That's a decision of the person who was tying it up. So the first thing you want to do is to look at your skein, open it up and look at it. Find the factory knots or the factory ties. The yarn should go completely around the skein. If at any point your skein does this business, where the tie does not go completely around, and usually it's not a big lump of strands, it might only be 1 or 2. But if it crosses that tie, see it there? If it crosses that tie, you cannot wind that like that. Find the tie, the factory tie, make sure it goes all the way around. Grab it there, then put your hands inside of that and give it a good snap once or twice, and then rotate it about 1/4 of a turn and snap it again. What that does is it kind of settles all of the strands down, because when they were wound at the factory, they were in a nice alignment, but then they got shipped. They got shipped in big loose skeins. I've seen them come out of the box. There's just a group of skeins. They're all kind of tied together, but they're all hanging free like this. So they have lots of wiggle room. And then Jennifer puts her extra ties in there, which is brilliant, and thank you, Jennifer, for doing that. They kind of help it stay together in this configuration in the dye pots. But then they get all kind of spaghetti-like in the dye pots. And before they're wound, they usually get a little snap and then twisted together. But as you can see, I have some that are loose, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. They will wind just fine. Do not panic. The next thing I want you to do is to get a yarn swift if you have one. If you don't have a yarn swift, then I suggest you find a chair to drape this over. I have wound it, draped over my feet. You're going to be there for a little while, so get comfortable. Pee first, okay? But the back of a chair works okay. It's not ideal. A Swift is ideal, but we don't live in ideal times. So I will be back with a Swift and some more advice. So in an ideal world, again, we don't live in an ideal world, you will have two pieces of equipment. This is called a yarn Swift or an umbrella Swift. They make many different kinds. Some are wood and handmade. This one is mass-produced and inexpensive. The whole point is it has to hold your yarn up, and it's clamped to a surface. It is really important that you clamp it down tightly. Make sure it's secure, because having your yarn Swift come off halfway through winding, not good. Not good. So you want to take it, you want to attach it to your table and secure it tightly. Just like that. Then there is a little button. I guess I should show you the button, because it amazes me. I don't know. My dad was a mechanic. Is a mechanic? I don't know. He's retired. But I always need to know how things work. So it amazes me that people don't. This little button right here is the release button. It works just like an umbrella. This is why this one is called an umbrella Swift. There are other kinds of Swifts. You know, I don't have them right here to show you, but trust me, there are other kinds. Some of them look like a cross, the Amish Swifts. They sit flat on a tabletop. Those will work just fine. Whatever you can find. This one, you secure it to the table, and then you want to open this slightly, not all the way, just slightly, because when it's down in its fully collapsed position, when you put yarn around it, it's kind of hard to wiggle it out. So I find I have better luck if I open it slightly before I try to drape my skein around it. So I'm going to put it back on my table securely. The other piece of equipment that you would have in an ideal world is a ball winder. This particular one I don't think is made anymore. It's a Royal ball winder. I love them. I've used them for years. Sad day, they're not made anymore. But there are other kinds out there. Some are better than others. Check the reviews before you order, really. But this also you want to secure to a table. This one and some of the others have this tension device. It is important that you snap it all the way out into the position. Underneath there's a little plastic notch that secures it. Make sure that's out there and all the way out and snapped, because if it's not, it won't wind a nice ball. So there's that. I am actually going to hand wind this ball of yarn. I could attach this, but most of you don't have both pieces of equipment, so I thought I'd show you the hard way. How about that? So now I have my yarn, and I have found the factory tie to make sure that my yarn is all going in the right direction, and I've snapped it a couple of times. Now I have my Swift beside me. I'm going to take this and open it up. You don't want any of the strands hanging down. Open it up and put it over the arms of the Swift, and then pull it towards you slightly. You're going to push the button on the lever and push up. You do not want the Swift as far up and tight as it will go. If you do that, it creates more drag, and it creates more places where the yarn will catch on itself and make it difficult to wind. So don't do that. Instead, I tell people, push it up all the way and then press the button and back off about 1 inch. Seriously, about the length of the tip of your thumb. Back it off about 1 inch. That gets the yarn to relax a little tiny bit, just a bit. Now, I'm going to turn the camera a little so you can see what I'm doing. Here is the first of Jennifer's ties. Often they're a different color. That's why, so you can find them. I put my thumb underneath them, slide my scissors in there, and then pull the yarn apart and pull the tie off. You don't want to just grab the tie and pull, because it wears on the surface of your fibers. So don't do that to yourself. Each one of them, and there could be 3 or 4, depends on how big of the skein it is, but each one of them, find it, stick your finger in there if you can, trim it and pull them off. Here's my last one. Stick my thumb underneath it. Slide my scissors in there, open it up, and pull them out. You don't want to leave them in the skein because as you wind it, they can create little tangly messes. So not good. Now we're back around to my factory tie. So I'm going to take my skein and I'm going to just slightly flip it so the knot is out here. And see how it twists this? I'm going to go all the way around the skein and rotate that so that it looks smooth. Yeah. All the way around. You might have to do this more than once. That's okay. Now I'm going to pull on this factory knot. See it pulling out? This little tie. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut below the knot, just this little tiny bit. That's waste. Then I'm going to undo and decide which end I want to pull. This one seems like it's coming from the inside, so I'm going to let it go to the inside. And this one seems to be coming off of here really nicely. So one of the things with bamboo is that it is so slick that as you knit, if you knit from a center pull ball, it will really collapse on itself. And as it does that, it tends to make little tangles, which are not so good. So Jennifer recommends that you knit from the outside of a center pull ball. That's fine. You know me and rules, right? If there's a rule, chances are I'm not going to follow it. I knit from the center of my center pull balls. If it makes a knot, I untangle it and I rewind it. But I wind my center pull balls usually by hand. I can travel with a yarn swift pretty easily or find a chair wherever I am, but a ball winder is a bulky piece of equipment and I don't take it with me everywhere, and I am the traveling knitting show, so I travel with me. You can wind a bouncy ball of yarn. My grandmother was famous for those. She wound them so tight that I promise you could play racquetball with them. They were so tight, I think the yarn was screaming for mercy. What you want to do is take your thumb, and remember we like our digits, so don't wrap it so tight that it turns blue or that you can't get it off. But you want to wrap a little piece around here. Then slide your thumb out, pull some yarn off the swift, and start wrapping around. Don't wind yourself this close to the swift. I'm trying to be on camera. You don't need to be this close. As a matter of fact, the farther away you are, the better off you are. So I'm rotating this little tuft of fiber a little bit each time and winding around and around. You can see why it's better if it's farther away. Just keep rotating your ball and wind around the tip of your thumb. This isn't a speed contest. There is no prize for getting it done fast or first. So settle in. I like to set this up. My grandson likes to watch me. Actually, we've had an entire discussion about ratios. It's a really great science tool for children. But, you know, it's all just part of the fun. And if you can wind with a swift, it's a lot more fun than winding without. So you notice my yarn pulls all the way off the swift fairly smoothly. That's because I made sure all of the loops were going in the same direction all the way around before I began. There is no recovering if you don't start out with it proper. It's just the way it is. So your properly wound ball should have some give to it. If it doesn't, you've wound it too tight. If you wind it too tight, you're stretching the yarn. Bamboo has no memory. It will not go back. So don't wind it tight. You want it to be able to squish a little bit. But this is a center pull ball, or not a center pull ball. This is an outside pull ball, and as I knit, it will just come right off of there. I will come back and show you how I wind a skein into a center pole ball using my thumb. So one more quick tip about winding your ball of yarn. As you wind, if the other end starts to trail down, it will begin to wind itself around the post of your swift. Do not let that happen. If it starts to trail down, it's okay. Just pick it up, pull it around the skein, drop it into the swift arm, and leave it sit there. It'll probably keep coming undone because you've removed a bunch of yarn from the skein already, so there's less holding it in place. But if you leave it to dangle down, it will knot up around your swift or your table leg or the other end of the ball as you're winding. It will make a great big mess. Don't do it. See, there goes mine. It's starting to escape again, flying around. As long as it's out there on the arm of the swift like that and it's not in danger of tangling with anything else, leave it alone. But as soon as it starts to drape down, you want to stop what you're doing, put it back up into the skein, up into the arms of the swift if you can. You don't want to wind it around the skein of yarn because as you unwind, you're just going to pull it free again. So just keep an eye on that tail. Make sure it doesn't do anything naughty. They're really prone to it. And hopefully you're having a pleasant winding experience. Okay, I wound my ball. There it is. Grandma would love it. It's probably a little soft for her, but it's okay. It's a happier yarn than Grandma's was. But I can just put this in my yarn bowl and knit straight from it. Life is good. I knit with center pole balls. I travel everywhere. They go with me and they don't roll all over the place, which on a ship is a good thing. So again, I'm going to show you putting it on the swift just because repetition is good. So here's the end. I'm going to pop this end free, turn my skein loose, open it up, and I'm going to locate the factory tie. There it is. See it? Here's my tie. If I look at it, my yarn goes all the way around. The tie goes all the way around. So my yarn is all going in the correct direction. I'm going to snap it, put it up on the swift, push it all the way up, back it back about an inch, remove the additional ties that Jennifer has put into the yarn, there's one here. I know for some of you this is old hat, and that's fantastic. I'm glad. But we have a lot of people all the time who are joining. Ooh, this one has 2 factory ties, so probably tied by a different person. This one here, and then there's another one over here. So let's see. This one, it looks like maybe it's just a knot like Jennifer's. It's probably just a knot like Jennifer's, but sometimes the ends are tied in 2 places. So pull up on the knot and pull up. It came free. Yay! We don't have a second factory knot or factory tie, just tied with itself. So the only one I really have to concern myself is this tie. It has both ends of my yarn. I'm going to pull up on the knot, trim the knot, carefully undo this, and decide which end I want to pull from. This one looks pretty good. Just kind of moving my skein around so it pulls off smoothly. All right, so this is how I wind a center pole ball without a ball winder. I'm going to move the ball winder out of the way because, here we go. All right, so I start with a long tail, like 6 inches, and I just let it hang down in my palm, and I take the yarn and I wind it around my thumb. And I wind it around my thumb quite a bit. And you'll notice I wind this way, and then sometimes I wind with my thumb up. That helps keep the wraps going up and down around it and hold it together. So this way, and then this way a few times. till I have a pretty generous little plum of yarn. And can you see where it's crisscrossing here, where I turn my thumb up and down? Now I'm going to start sliding it loose on my thumb because, again, blue digit's not fun. So I've slid it more towards the tip of my thumb, and I'm going to wind at an angle from the wrist side, my thumb side, up, over, and across. And then I'm just going to rotate the little plum of yarn around my thumb. Pull some more of this out. Wind it and rotate. So I'm spinning the little circle of fluff on my thumb ever so slowly around. It makes a little nest looking thing of yarn. See it there? This is the tail. I want to make sure I don't wind over the tail. Stick my thumb back in it, wind some more. Wind it around and turn your thumb, or turn the yarn on your thumb. With practice, you can make a really nice center pull ball of yarn this way. I don't ever change the position of my thumb. As I get more and more layers of yarn around this, I will eventually pull my thumb out of the center of it, but I'll keep my thumb down in that well to kind of hold the place open. And again, you don't want to do this super tight, not just because you don't need a blue thumb, but because you want the yarn to have a little wiggle room. Right, sure, Elisa. You don't want it wound really tight. Winding around my thumb and rotating slowly. Bigger skeins of bamboo might be tied up differently. These are mini skeins, but they're all going to have very similar characteristics. They're going to have the tie put in by the factory, and they'll have the tie put in by Jennifer at the time that she dyed it. So be careful to identify which one's which. Of course, the ones that Jennifer put in, when you cut the knot, will just come out of the skein, and the factory tie will not come out. It will start pulling the ends. What you don't want to do is remove those ties before you have it on the yarn swift. Those ties hold all of the strands together in the right place and keep them nice and tidy. If you cut them all open first and then put it over the swift, it's kind of like trying to get the spaghetti back in the package after you cooked it. Doesn't work so well. All right, so here's the beginnings of my center pull ball. I'll finish winding it and show you the finished project. So one more quick tip about winding your ball of yarn. As you wind, if the other end starts to trail down, it will begin to wind itself around the post of your swift. Do not let that happen. If it starts to trail down, it's okay. Just pick it up, pull it around the skein, drop it into the swift arm, and leave it sit there. It'll probably keep coming undone because you've removed a bunch of yarn from the skein already, so there's less holding it in place. But if you leave it to dangle down, it will knot up around your swift or your table leg or the other end of the ball as you're winding. It will make a great big mess. Don't do it. See, there goes mine. It's starting to escape again, flying around. As long as it's out there on the arm of the swift like that and it's not in danger of tangling with anything else, leave it alone. But as soon as it starts to drape down, you want to stop what you're doing, put it back up into the skein, up into the arms of the swift if you can. You don't want to wind it around the skein of yarn because as you unwind, you're just going to pull it free again. So just keep an eye on that tail. Make sure it doesn't do anything naughty. They're really prone to it. And hopefully you're having a pleasant winding experience.